Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the latest AWMSG Open Day. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Stephen Lister. I'm a health economist at Bristol Myers Squibb. I sit on the new medicines group of AWMSG, and I've been close to this important Welsh HTA agency for a very long time. Now, you're welcome. For those of you who are new to all of this, there are previous sessions, previous recordings of our open days on the AWMSG website. So if this isn't, if there's things you need to know, you have questions, you want to know what else has been discussed previously, go and have a look. But we've got plenty of time today for questions, thoughts as we go along. There's a couple of quiz breaks, so get your phones ready with slido.com. You've done that before. I'd like to introduce Rosie and Gail and Claire from our esteemed HTA group. That's the AWTC colleagues, who are going to talk today about the One Wales medicines process, about the AWTC website, and a few other things. As always, do put any questions you have in the question box. I think that's enough from me. So without further ado, hold on to your seats, and it's over to Rosie.
I'm just getting the login.
Hello, hi. My name's Rosie, and Rosie Spears. I'm one of the senior scientists here, and I'm going to give you a brief overview on our One Wales medicines process. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Right, the session is going to cover who we all are and why we have the process, how the process fits in with other routes of access within NHS Wales, who can engage in the process, how it works, industry involvement, obviously, and also reviewing decisions made through this process. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Right, we're a small team in AWTTC who's led by Gail Woodland, who's the senior pharmacist and team leader, who's also here on this presentation, so she'll be able to answer some questions as well at the end. Myself, Catherine Chaplin and Claire Elliott are all the senior scientists on the team. And then we have Carolyn Hughes, Rachel Jones, Bridget Ann Kenny, who are scientists and do a lot of the writing for us. And we have Laura Phillips, who is our administrative support. So if we go on to the next slide. Just a kind of a potted history of how the One Wales medicines process came about. Initially, it was found that in the absence of health technology assessment advice, individual patient funding requests are the main route of access for treatments that are not routinely funded in Wales. And what it was becoming apparent was that the IPFR process is not really appropriate where there are cohorts of patients for the same clinical presentation. And so there was potential there for inequity of access really between health boards within Wales if the IPFR process was being used for the same indication of medicine and decisions being made at local health board levels. So the One Wales medicines process was developed to enable access to medicines where there's a clear unmet clinical need for a cohort of clearly defined patients within Wales. So if we go on to the next slide. This is just kind of to give you an overview of all the different routes of access for medicines in Wales. And as you're probably aware, the main route is really through HTA appraisal with advice from either AWMSG or NICE. There is also the Early Access to Medicine scheme, which is administered by the MHRA, which applies in Wales as well. We have a Wales free of charge scheme to bridge the gap between licence and HTA appraisal for medicines to be provided for free, which has been covered in one of our other open days. The IPFR process for individual patients, as previously discussed, and then the One Wales process to try to plug a bit of a gap which is left where there's a cohort of patients that don't fit into these sort of routes. And it's probably worth saying that it's not something that we use to a huge extent. It's a very small number of medicines that go through this process because obviously the preferred routes are through HTA appraisal. So if we go on to the next slide. If we look at the sort of medicines that we're considering through the One Wales process, they may be licensed or unlicensed, and the criteria for both are slightly different depending on their license status. So for licensed medicines, the advice is considered to be interim to HTA advice. And if we consider a licensed medicine through the One Wales process, we would be expecting a submission to AWMSG or NICE within usually 12 to 18 months of any One Wales decision. And then for the off-label or unlicensed medicines, there must be no licensed medicine that's routinely available that will meet the patient's needs. The medicine's not licensed for the indication of interest, or it may be licensed for the indication, but the requested use is outside of the accepted treatment pathway. So we may be looking at the specific treatment pathway that's approved by NICE or AWMSG if there's a desire for it to be used somewhere else outside of that. So if we go on to the next slide, how we go about choosing the medicines for One Wales. The main route is through intelligence from the All Wales IPFR data. AWTC actually administer an All Wales database for IPFR, where all IPFRs from health boards across Wales are recorded and available then for us to gain intelligence. So on a monthly basis, we check the database to see if there's any repeated requests for the same medicine and same indication. And if we do find that there's repeated requests within a 12-month period, we will investigate further, get in touch with clinicians, etc., to see if there's a potentially an unmet need there that can be addressed by the One Wales process. We also do accept requests for medicines to be considered from the health board panels themselves, from the Welsh Health Specialised Services Committee. Chief pharmacists or clinical experts can all request medicines directly to AWTC. We have a medicine request form that's available on the AWTC website, and this is available for them to download, and then if they complete this, it gives us all of the information that we need to decide whether or not that would be suitable for the One Wales process. And it's important for us to stress that the process is not driven by the pharmaceutical companies. And the main reason for that is that we would never want the One Wales process to be seen as a substitute for full HTA of licensed medicines. And so we encourage requests to come from the service rather from the industry. And once we've actually been through the criteria and decided whether a medicine meets the criteria or not, the work programme is agreed with the AWMSG steering committee before we proceed. So if we go on to the next slide, let's see, where are we? Okay. This is just a kind of like a potted version of the process as a whole, to give you an idea of what's involved really. Once we've actually identified a medicine and it's been agreed that it's going to go through the process, we start off by contacting the MA holder and clinicians. And the MA holder, we're requesting the best available evidence, clinical and cost effectiveness evidence, and also the same from clinician and patient groups to input into the process. And also as part of the request to the MA holder, if it's for a licensed medicine, then we will be requesting a commercial arrangement if it's applicable, and that would be interim to the HTA advice being published. And what the licensed medicine One Wales process gives for that sort of situation is the opportunity for additional clinical or evidence to be gathered prior to HTA. And so once we've gathered that information, AWTC, we also perform a literature search and collate all of the evidence that's available in the public domain as well, to collate into a draft evidence status report. This is forwarded to the MA holder and clinicians for comment, and this is the point at which we use the opportunity to ask any specific questions, because obviously in the process of collating this report, we quite often sort of come across areas where there may be a bit of uncertainty, where we're unsure on possibly the dose used, or if there's any associated treatment costs, etc. And so that's the point at which we can ask for the specifics around that, particularly from clinicians really. And so once that comes back from the clinicians and the company, we then may revise the report in the light of any comments that come back. And then the finalised report goes to our One Wales Medicines Assessment Group, who are convened to meet to assess this medicine. The group has panel members from all of the IPFR panels and health boards in Wales, and so there's a representative from each one, with additional members as well, so finance director, health economist, lay member, etc. And they meet and discuss the report and the evidence. And at the meeting, we do also request the presence of a clinical expert who can be there to answer any questions about the sort of like the actual specifics of treating these patients with the medicine in question. And at the end of that, the group will vote as to whether or not the treatment should be supported for use in Wales. And the recommendation then is formed, and that's sent on to the Chief Executive Management Team for Wales, who are then asked to endorse the recommendation. So following the endorsement by the Chief Executive Management Team, the decision is then disseminated to the service in NHS Wales, and obviously is also the clinicians and the MA holder are informed of the decision, and it's displayed on our Awttc and AWMSG websites accordingly. And so if we go on to the next slide now. Okay, we're going to have a quick interim break for a couple of questions on the Slido quiz. There's just 2 questions, so they're true and false. So if you want to grab your phones and either use a QR code or slido.com and that pin, and you should be able to vote on our questions. Okay. So it should come up in a moment. There we go. First, true or false? One Wales decisions are routinely funded in Wales. Do you think that's true or false? If you don't know, have a guess. Okay. Right, we're slightly split there. Righty-ho, if we go on to the next question then, please. Okay, and the next true-false statement is One Wales decisions do not apply to biosimilars. Do you think that's true or false? You're interesting. Got a similar split to the previous question. Okay. Right, if we go on to the next slide, I'll put you out your misery and give you the answers there. Okay. Right. Actually, your oh, that's the can we go back to slide 10, please? There we go. That's it. Well, I hope if you're quick enough, you would have got the answers to the next bunch of questions. Right, the One Wales decision, it's actually not true that the One Wales decisions are routinely funded in Wales. There's no specific funding allocated to One Wales as far as medicine supply is concerned. However, Following the endorsement by the chief executives, which obviously represent health boards in Wales, there is an expectation that these medicines are included on their health boards formularies. And we have a kind of platform called Share, which informs all of the formulary pharmacists of One Wales decisions and gives them the information that's required for them to put them on the formulary. One Wales decisions do not apply to biosimilars. It's a bit of a double negative, really, so that's false. The One Wales decisions can apply to biosimilars. So if we have a One Wales decision for a biological medicine, it will also apply to any relevant biosimilar products that may appear on the market subsequent to the decision, and that's obviously with the proviso that the price is the same or lower than that of the reference product that was originally used in the assessment. So if we go on to the next slide, I've got a brief summary here of the involvement that's expected from industry in relation to One Wales. So it does differ depending on whether the medicine is licensed or unlicensed. So for licensed medicines, there's a lot more involvement with the company, really, and there is an expectation for the commitment to engage in future NICE or AWMSG HTA, and that would be particularly within 12 to 18 months of a One Wales decision being granted. And we also would expect a confidential commercial arrangement to be submitted. This may be just a simple discount, or it could be confirmation of any existing arrangements for either that medicine or other medicines from that company for the duration of the One Wales decision. We do also expect the company to provide some clinical and cost effectiveness evidence and budget impact information. And also the idea is that the One Wales decision is going to provide the opportunity for development and use of a data collection tool for liaising with clinicians so that outcome data can be collected for the duration of the One Wales decision. And this outcome data can then be used to obviously inform part of the HTA submission. And also, as mentioned previously, we do ask the MA holder to make comment on the draft evidence status report, which is the report that goes to the assessment group to make the decision. For unlicensed medicines, there is obviously we can't expect a commitment from companies to make a submission for HTA because that's not appropriate, but we do still request any clinical or cost effectiveness evidence which may be available to the company that may have on file. And also what's really useful to us is if there's any future intentions or plans to license the medicine in question for the indication that is undergoing One Wales. That's really handy for us to know so that we can have an idea if it's likely to be interim to licensing and HTA at some point in the future. And as with licensed medicines, we do also ask the company to comment on the draft ESR as well. So if we go on to the next slide now, another little quiz. And so just 3 more true/false questions. So grab your phones again. Okay, if we get the Slido quiz questions up, we can, there we go, fab. Okay, woof, we're in there. Commercial arrangement offered as part of the One Wales process is no longer valid if the medicine receives positive AWMSG or NICE advice. Still ticking up. Just wait to see when it kind of reaches a static number. There we go. Okay. I think we can probably go on to the next question. Okay, all health boards in Wales must monitor the clinical outcomes of using medicines recommended by the One Wales process. Is that true or false? Okay. Oh, that's a strong answer there. Okay, I think that looks like we've reached a plateau. So if we go on to the final question. One Wales decisions are reviewed every 12 months. Is that true or false? Okay. Right, I think we've reached a thing. So if we go on to slide 13, please. Right. Yeah, most of you are correct with that. Any commercial arrangements offered as part of the process are no longer valid if the medicine receives the AWMSG or NICE final appraisal document. What we would tend to do in these circumstances is we would ensure that we contact the MA holder a month before the expected date of expiry, just to ensure that we're all kind of like aware of the situation and this is anticipated. As far as the next question is concerned, that is true. There is an expectation for both licensed and off-label medicines for the health boards to actually monitor usage and provide outcomes for the One Wales decisions. This is used to feed into the review process, and so we do check how many people have been using the medicine, so it gives us an idea if our budget impacts have been correct, and also if the outcomes are as expected, because obviously with a lot of these medicines, the reasons they're going through this process is that the clinical effectiveness evidence is maybe not as robust as it would be for something that was going through a full HTA appraisal. Now, as far as the review process is concerned, it is true that they are reviewed after 12 months. However, I think that we have in the last year changed our policy due to the sort of snowballing effect of reviews being carried out on an annual basis, and for some quite static medicines really where the review process wasn't deemed to be of much value. So what we tend to do now is, or what we do is every One Wales decision is reviewed at 12 months after the initial decision. And at that point, the assessment group can then decide what the next period should be before the next review is. And so that could be anything between 12 months and 3 years. And that's really dependent upon the nature of the status of that medicine and the potential for maybe maturation of clinical evidence or trials, etc. If there's one in the next year, then it might be a 1 year process. But if there's not been any change, or there's unlikely to be any change, then they may want to extend that review period to a 3 year period. So if we move on to the next slide, the review process as a whole is kind of like a truncated version really of the initial assessment process, and so it is quite a thorough review that we do carry out. Initially, we request any new evidence, patient numbers, outcome data from clinicians, and we also will contact the MA holder so that we can be provided with any maybe clinical trial data, etc., that could have become mature within the 12-month period since the original decision. And we also conduct, once again, another literature search to see if there's any new published evidence available in the previous 12 months, and that's once again collated into an evidence review report, which really just includes any new guidelines, evidence, patient numbers and outcome data that we've been able to obtain. And it's important here to say that the review report just has new evidence. We don't repeat any evidence that was initially included in the first report. And so This report is also sent out in a draft version to the MA holder and to clinicians to just check that they're happy with the contents and that we haven't omitted anything. And then this is used by the assessment group to review the decision. This is usually done in a virtual way, so they're sent the paperwork and a voting slip, and then they email their vote back to us. So the decision is really whether to continue with the One Wales recommendation, or whether or not they believe that there's enough evidence there, or there's some evidence that warrants a reassessment of the actual medicine. If the decision is to reassess the medicine, then it will go through the full One Wales process from the beginning again. All of the review recommendations are also endorsed by the Chief Executive Management Team, and then, as with the original decision, this is disseminated to the service and to the MA holder and clinicians, and the updated recommendation is displayed on the AWMSG and Awttc websites. And so if we go finally on to the next slide. If you want any more detail on the process, we have the One Wales Medicines Process document, which is available on the Awttc website, and that provides us with more detail on the criteria for medicines that are included, and the process in more detail, and also terms of reference of the assessment group, etc. And then it also, on the Awttc website, we've got a list of all of the medicines that have been considered through the One Wales process and the current work programme, and also there's a list of all of those medicines that were put forward for the process or appeared to possibly be potentially could be considered by One Wales, but for one reason or another were not deemed suitable once they were looked into in more detail. And so there is a list of those medicines available there with a very brief rationale as to why they didn't meet the criteria for the One Wales process. So if we go on to the final slide, just like to say thanks for listening to us, and we're going to hang around now. Myself and Gail are here if there are any questions that you'd like answered.
That's brilliant, Rosie. Thank you. There's been a number of questions in the chat I might just summarise for you. Can you just give us a quick indication of timelines? That's the first straightforward question. Second, perhaps a couple of examples of either specific One Wales decisions, or perhaps reflect more generally on the impact that One Wales has had in getting great access for important medicines for patients in Wales.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for those, they're great. So in terms of timelines, it is a shorter process than the HTA process. We're talking usually about a couple of months between starting having the decision from the steering committee to then writing the report, getting that out to industry and clinicians, getting that then to the One Wales Medicines Assessment Group. After that, then it was slightly in the lap of the gods, depending on how long CEMT take to endorse a decision, but they're usually fairly quick. They have a meeting every month, and it would go to that next meeting. And then that decision, as soon as we get it in, we get that decision out to the service. So say maybe 2 to 3 months for the kind of the whole process. And then in terms of the review, then we start to contact companies a couple of months before the next review, just to get some information so that it's ready to go. Just to reiterate, really, for those that are going through the health technology appraisal process, for those that are licensed, they may have a first review, but the idea is that we're not going to review them again, because the idea is that they're going to be pushed through the HTA process. In terms of sort of the medicines that we've looked at, we've had quite a lot of cancer medicines go through. So during the COVID period, we actually looked at oral treatments for prostate cancer, for hormone sensitive prostate cancer. So we were able to provide some interim advice during that COVID pandemic, up to the point in which then NICE appraised those particular medicines. So that was useful, because we were the first home country, if you like, to be able to get those medicines out to our patients in Wales, which was great. We have looked at licensed medicines before. So an example of that was one for Parkinson's disease, and this was really because the evidence base that they had in terms of trial data was looking at use perhaps earlier in the treatment pathway, and the place that they wished to use that treatment was actually later, prior to sort of more invasive therapies. So we were able to provide that to the service within it was about 2 years, I think, in total in the end, by the time it went through HTA. The benefit of that was that they actually also had a clinical trial that was ongoing at the time, and we could use that data then to support that health technology assessment, and there was a chance then to collect any other kind of data they might need, things like resource use costs, things like that you might be able to provide that you wouldn't necessarily get through usual routes. And then we have a few on our books that are off-label, and they've been on for a little while, and the reason for that is that they're sort of likely to be licensed for those indications, but there is sort of a niche group of patients that would need access and wouldn't really fit the IPFR process, because IPFR is looking at things like situations where not exceptionality, but where there's a significant clinical benefit for those individuals, and it kind of takes it out of the area where you would be you're looking more at sort of cohorts in terms of One Wales, and so IPFR really isn't the route for those. We do retire our decisions, so if national guidance becomes available, we think they're no longer relevant to go through the One Wales process. So we did that for docetaxel. Again, that was for metastatic prostate cancer. When the NICE guidance became available, it became more sort of standard of care. And we also are able to, for some of our medicines, there may be other ones that are coming onto the market that then get a HTA approval and actually are the preferred treatment options. So things will naturally drop off as well because other treatments are becoming available.
Okay, that's super good. Quick, there's a few questions arriving in the chat. Interesting one here. Would the One Wales process be suitable for a product for which the benefits are more patient focused and therefore harder to quantify, with reference to Rosie's comment about collating patient feedback during the process?
Possibly. It would need to be done on a case-by-case basis, but if the clinical and the cost effectiveness evidence is already there, it's harder to really justify putting it through the One Wales process. But if there is some avenue of data collection that's needed to really support its consideration through HTA, then yeah, we would certainly look at it. It would be, as I say, really a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, of course. Okay. What about, why does the company have to offer a commercial arrangement at the start of the process for licensed medicines, considering this is the process is not generally meant to be actually initiated by the company in the first place?
So if we have a licensed medicine, the only reason that we would be looking at it is to get that additional data. Otherwise, they would be going through the HTA route. So this is sort of saying, okay, well, we're going to give you early access to this medicine in Wales. So as a benefit to the service, providing some form of discount is recommended. It's not compulsory, but it is recommended.
Yes, okay, all right, that's helpful. What about AWMS? Does AWMS influence timing like it does in England? And what about the timing of One Wales decisions? What timelines do health boards have to adopt One Wales decisions, just like they have 60 days for HTA?
Yeah, sure. So AWMS currently, I can't really answer that question at the moment. There are things happening at the moment that may be changing our process. So kind of I'll put a sort of standby on that, and we'll come back to you at a later date on that, if that's okay. In terms of Awms currently, I would say that they don't particularly affect us through One Wales at the moment, but sort of watch this space. There may be changes there. In terms of time to going on to formulary, no, there's no, as I said before, there's no expectations of funding for One Wales decisions, so there's no expectations in terms of time to going on to formulary. But we do what we can to facilitate health boards to put it onto their formulary by using share and providing that information. And we also monitor health board compliance against looking at their formularies as well to see if those medicines are on there, and if there are any issues, we would go back to the health board and ask them what the problem was locally.
Perfect. And one last one from me is, do medicines deemed out of scope for NICE and AWMSG ever fall into One Wales scope?
I'm not sure, to be honest, what you mean by that. In terms of NICE, if it doesn't fall into the scope of NICE, it may fall into the scope of AWMSG if there's a service need. Sure. And if there's a service need and there is clinical and cost effectiveness data, then the HTA route is where that medicine will go. If it's really looking at, as I say, where you need to gather additional data for whatever reason, because there's an issue in terms of place and pathway or something like that. So it's more that there's an absence of data, not particularly to do with scope per se or anything like that.
Okay, super. Now, I think that is the majority of the questions. Just for now, if there's burning questions that we haven't answered, please do raise your hand and we'll get to those in the next 15 minutes. I think over to, who's next? Is it over to Claire, I think, next.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks, Rosie.
Hello. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to talk today. I'll be just talking about the new Awttc website, and if we could go to the next slide, please. So actually this has been demonstrated quite well in Rosie's talk. So the current situation is there are two separate websites, one for AWMSG and one for Awttc. And it's very confusing. It's confusing for our users. It's also confusing for us here as to what information is found on each. So as Rosie was saying, One Wales information is mainly found on the Awttc website, but our HTA information, everything like that, is found on the AWMSG. And so, you know, it's where do you look? So, and it was also from a review of the All Wales Medicine Strategy Group that was done in 2019, which was an independent review, that it was clear that the vast majority of people use the acronyms AWMSG, which is the All Wales Medicine Strategy Group, and Awttc, which is the All Wales Therapeutics and Toxicology Centre, simultaneously and interchangeably. And so the decision was made that to help, you know, with access, that we were going to merge the two websites into one. So if we could have the next slide, please. So as I've said, the benefits are that all the information will be in one place. So it'll be better for our users. Also, the websites at the moment, so the AWMSG is actually a fairly recent website, which we rebuilt and relaunched last year, and that's using the new NHS Wales web platform, which has a greater flexibility and functionality and everything else, which is taken care of by the Digital Health Care Wales, which is the kind of IT services for the NHS in Wales, so they do all that for us. However, the Awttc one doesn't have all that. It's built on a different platform, which is quite old-fashioned. And again, another benefit of building our new website on the new NHS Wales web platform is that then we could be fully compliant with both Welsh language and accessibility standards. So there are challenges. We have to ensure the needs of the various audiences, which are different. So our audiences range from patients, public, to obviously yourselves, pharmaceutical industry, to clinicians, to Welsh Government, to our partner organisations, so a wide range, which all may have different needs. So we have to consider those. We also cover quite a range. Probably you're aware more of our work in terms of medicines access, but AWTC as well. We also have the poisons unit, which is part of the National Poisons Information Centre, which is a UK-wide organisation. We also host the Yellow Card Centre for Wales as well, which is, you know, again part of the wider MHRA Yellow Card scheme. In addition to also the AWTC work, which is done around medicines optimisation and prescribing analysis and data. So we have all of those kind of functions that we need to represent on our new website. And also another challenge is that some of those do have specific organisational names and identities that we need to kind of preserve. So for example, AWMSG, the Yellow Card Centre and the Welsh National Poisons Unit, for example. So if I can have the next slide, please. So what we did, we realised, you know, we're a bunch of scientists, pharmacists, clinicians and medical writers, that we don't really have the skills as such to look at what makes a good website. So we did actually get in a web consultancy which specialised in the design and development of digital platforms called Box UK, and we, with them, used an evidence-based methodology, which did involve stakeholder and user consultation and feedback, and this was then informed the development of the information architecture for the new website. And I know that some representatives from the pharmaceutical industry did actually get involved in that as well, so thank you very much for those that did. So next slide, please. So where we are now, so we're anticipating the new website will be launched in January 2022. It will be named the AWTC website, even though it will encompass all of the information about AWMSG as well. We are currently testing the beta site, and so we would appreciate your views. So we can make any of those last minute tweaks and you know, so ensure that it's really, you know, what our users need and want. And we would like you to explore the new website and give us your feedback. Now, I know with new websites, it's kind of difficult just to show them, you know, you really do need to, as a user, sit down and just have an explore yourself. But we will just have a quick kind of drive through it, if you like, to show you the areas in particular where we think, you know, yourselves and the pharmaceutical industry, you know, are where the information more pertinent to you is. So thank you very much. I can see that we're on it now already. So this is the look of it. So at the top, we have a carousel, which will be our kind of a call to action, our highlight of events that are coming up that we'd like people to attend or to register for. So you can see the Pharmaceutical Industry Open Day. It's one of them. We also have workshops for colleagues. We have our public meetings as well. If you could just scroll down a little bit, please. As we do with the current AWMSG website, we will then publish the latest resources. So that's our medicines optimisation resources on the left-hand side and the consultations that are open. That, of course, pharmaceutical industry are also invited to submit responses to. And then on the right, we will have the latest AWMSG advice. So this is the latest HTA advice that has been released by AWMSG. If you could scroll down a bit further. So these are kind of our, I suppose, our main areas of work in AWTTC. So accessing medicines will be one we'll be coming back to, and that will include our advice about not only HTA, but also the One Wells process, about free of charge, IPFR. So it's all to do with, you know, medicines access. Report of side effects is obviously our yellow card colleagues there, so medicine safety. Optimizing medicines use, again, is our optimization kind of resources, guidance, prescribing data analysis, our national prescribing indicators, things like that will be found under there. AWMSG is just a bit about, you know, AWMSG in itself, as it is a separate kind of scientific advisory committee to Welsh Government. So it's, you know, what their role is, what their remit is, and also how we at AWTTC support them. Get Involved is mainly aimed at our patient carers and our patient organisations, so how they get involved in the work we do. And ensuring value, actually, this will be of relevance to the pharmaceutical industry as well. This is where we will have, and it will still be under accessing medicines as well, but our information about the Welsh Patient Access Scheme, about other commercial arrangement options. I don't know if many of you have had dealings with our CMAT team, and I can't remember what the abbreviation stands for. I think it's Commercial Management Access Team or something like that. Information about them and how to contact them will be under there as well. So scrolling down a bit further, just do this very quickly. So AWMSG meetings, meeting papers, our news will be on the left-hand side, and then a bit about AWTTC itself on the right. Now, if we scroll up again, thank you. So the top bar, the navigation, so we have a limited number on the blue at the top. So we have our COVID-19 resources. Obviously, that's very pertinent now. As time goes on, hopefully it will become less. So that will in time probably be removed. And if there's another kind of a topical kind of event going on or whatever that we will carry information for, that will slot there. Accessing medicine, so this is the bit now. So if we could just click on that top, not that one, the very top, the accessing medicines one. That's it. Okay, so we have then, if we could just scroll down a little, thank you. So we have about the processes, access to medicines, and Rosie was talking about the One Wells process. At the moment, all that information is on the AWTTC old website, not on the AWMSG, so it will all be together on this website. Won't have a look at it now because, you know, as I say, have a look at it at your leisure. Medicines recommendations, if we just click on to that. This again, if you're familiar with the AWMSG website, this is where all the, if you could just scroll down a bit, please. This is where all the kind of the medicines that we've either appraised or we've excluded from appraisal, or we haven't received a submission for, or there's a AWMSG advice. This is where they're all listed. Also, we have the One Wales advice listed, or recommendations decisions, sorry, listed here as well. If you scroll up a bit, sorry. You can then search, do an advanced search for different types of either status or, you know, medicine name or whatever. If we just go back a page, back up to accessing medicines, thank you. So pharmaceutical industry submissions is a lot of the stuff that you will need. So if we click on that, please. Okay, so this is then all the documentation that our colleagues will need to either submit horizon scanning information to us, section about that, how we use PharmaScan, a medicine for AWMSG appraisal. So this is all exactly the same as it is on the current AWMSG website, a Welsh patient access scheme, and also a free of charge medicine supply agreement. Now, at the moment, all the free of charge information is on a separate website to the HTA stuff. So this brings it all into one place. So this is kind of all the routes, if you like, the pharmaceutical industry, you know, can make your submissions to us. Okay, won't go through it in detail now, but just to highlight it's there. So just thinking now, if we go just back up again, very quickly, our medicines optimization and safety at top is all where our meds op documents are. Won't show you all of those, there's lots of them, but probably, you know, do take time to have a look. And if you just lastly go to work in progress. Thank you, just click on that. So this is now everything that is kind of what we're working on at the moment, and in particular for yourselves, you might be interested in both the consultations where we invite clinician, industry, public to submit a response to any kind of guidance consultation we've got out, and also medicines appraisals. Those are the ones that are in progress at the moment, so the ones that we are currently doing HTA on. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. As I say, please do take a look, log in and let us know your thoughts. Thank you.
Claire, that's fantastic. Thank you for a whistle-stop tour. This is a really valuable resource. If you're not sure what to do, where to go, then just go and have a look. If you're still not sure, then feel free to ask one of the AWTTC team anytime. Just in the last couple of minutes, one question on the One Wales process, probably for Gail, just to keep you fresh. Gail, does the One Wales process mean that if a clinician identifies a cohort of patients they'd like to try a new licensed drug in prior to NICE guidance, that they could use One Wales, or they still need to do it separately through a business case or IPFR or similar?
Okay, so if it's suitable to go through HTA, sorry, I feel like a broken record here. We would want to push it through the HTA route. If they want to use it locally, yes, obviously they can apply locally to access a medicine. If the best route really is if the clinician contacts us, fills in the form so that we can have a look and see really whether or not it's going to be suitable. But it could be suitable for One Wales. We'd need to know a little bit more information. We tend to try and avoid, unless it's sort of a tertiary centre where they're treating for the whole of Wales, we would tend to say if it's more of a local issue, then it probably best to be considered locally. But if there's an unmet need across Wales, then yes, it possibly may meet our criteria.
That's perfect. No, very thorough. Thank you. Just a question. So how do we get hold of recording and these slides after the meeting?
Hi, Steph Francis here. Yeah, we'll circulate a link to our website and they're loaded within a fortnight. So you'll be able to access this session as well as the previous sessions, and inform your colleagues if they haven't been able to attend.
And
that's perfect. Thank you.
That's Claire here. Sorry, that will be on the AWMSG website, not the AWTTC at the moment.
Okay, if we could share a link to that for all attendees, just for convenience, that would be really helpful. Steph, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Steve. Can you just pop the next slide up? And I just wanted to say thanks to the team. It's been really good, and loads of questions. It's been brilliant, more than we've had previously. I should probably just say, for those of you who haven't met, although I feel like I probably have in the previous sessions, I'm Steph Francis, a scientist at AWTC, involved in horizon scanning and HTA, and also I volunteered to be the farmer engagement representative. So you've probably heard me talking about these sessions time and time again. For those of you that haven't been to one of our previous ones, is there another slide with the programme on that just advertises the next sessions on Wednesday, the 15th of December, and that's health economics and budget impact. So that will be an update from our health economics team. That's a Wednesday, not a Thursday. It's through us internally because all the other sessions have been a Thursday. And also on this slide, you can see the other sessions that we've had. If I can just get your attention for one more minute, I really like you to fill in. Well, it's another Slido poll, I'm afraid. It's feedback so that we can help plan next year and see what people want to hear about and whether it's worth repeating anything that we've had before. So bear with us. It's 4 or 5 questions. That'd be a great way to finish this session.
Guys, thanks to the team. Oh, yeah, thanks to everybody. Set of questions just now. Listen, do join again on Wednesday, 15th of December. Music to my ears, the health economists amongst us. Health economics, budget impact, particularly how this, you'll get a clear view of how this then differs from requirements for NICE and SMC, other HTA groups out there. Feel free to come back to the team with any questions after this meeting. And yeah, join again on the 15th. And yeah, these feedback questions are really helpful, so thanks. Any further thoughts from anyone on the team?
And any questions that haven't been answered, feel free to email us at AWTC. We'll include that email address on the email we'll send around after the meeting. Appreciate we're just
perfect.
Heading over time, but I really appreciate your input here. You can see a few people have dropped off, so we'll take about 20. We'll take 20 votes as better than nothing. I think this is the last one. It's taken longer than I thought, but we've got there. Brilliant.
Fantastic. I for one, Steph, and looking forward to getting back face to face. So absolutely face to face meeting next year.
Brilliant. Thanks all.
Thanks everybody. Have the most amazing day. Looking forward to seeing you again on the 15th of December. Thank you and good night.